everyone, welcome back and thank you for joining us. We're going to continue our stay in Utah. The focus of this video will be the national park. Utah is known as being one of the best for national parks. They have 5 of them. They're referred to as the Big Five or the Mighty Five. And doing our research prior to going to Utah, we intended on going to 4 of the 5 national parks. However, we ended up only making it to 3. We had timed entry reservations for Arches National Park, which we kind of secured those reservations way in advance because you have to. And we also booked 2 nights in a hotel in Moab, which is the city that Arches is in. However, if you watched our first video in Utah, you know that we had some challenges in the beginning. So because of that, we ended up having to change our plans around a little bit and we couldn't go to Arches. However, we did end up going to Capital Reef, to Canyonlands, as well as Bryce National Park. So we'll start with Capital Reef National Park. It's not overcrowded there at all. They have petroglyphs that are over 1,000 years old, 2,000 or so natural bridges. It's the second largest national park in Utah, second only to Canyonlands. And oddly enough, they are the 2 least visited parks in Utah of the 5. It's divided into 3 separate sections. You have the Fruita Historic District, which is one of the most popular, if not the most popular section there. That's where you'll find the historic fruit orchards, as well as the Gifford House and some other historic homes and buildings. When you're there, you have to make sure that you go and get a pie. They hype that up like that's that's at the Gifford House. But when you go to the visitor center, when you first get there, like there's a sign about it, and even the people who work there tell you about it. So that's like their thing. They want you to make sure you go and get a pie.
I agree with them. You should go and get a pie. We did.
We did, yep. It's in fact, like it's almost right there. After you leave the visitor center at the entrance, it's pretty close. I guess a couple of miles. We ended up going and Felicia got a mixed berry pie there, which was $9.
Cash only.
Cash only.
The lady working there was very concerned that Kevin couldn't eat anything. She was coming up with alternatives. What she came up with was he could go pick apricots from a tree and he could have an apricot safely. That was she was very nice.
She was really nice.
The pie was good.
The next section of the park is the Water Pocket Fold. And that's where a lot of people go hiking. That's where they have the popular trails at for hiking. And then the final section was the Cathedral Valley. Cathedral Road kind of winds through the lesser known section of the park. You need like a 4-wheel drive or something like that in order to drive. We didn't really do all that.
Yeah, we didn't really spend a ton of time in Capital Reef between the fact that we weren't doing hikes and there was some construction. We pretty much saw the things that we had on our list to do.
Though I will add that while I think we did enjoy Capital Reef National Park, of the 3 that we visited, for me, it was my least favorite. Even though it was nice, it was my least favorite.
I think so too for me. We left and we headed towards Hanksville. So we went to see Factory Butte. Kevin had wanted to get some pictures of that. The signage was completely absent. So we didn't know where we were going. The GPS had already stopped working. Luckily, Kevin was like, I think that's it, because there was nothing around it but one butte, and we made a left, and then when we turned, there was a sign that confirmed that was the right one. We also were trying to see the Mars Research Center, which we had kind of an idea because we had looked for it before we drove, but the GPS went out and it should have been right where we were, but we never did find any signs, even though you're not really allowed. You can like drive up to the parking lot and just kind of see the buildings, but you can't do anything else. That's all we plan to do. They
chose that location because you'd have to see the area, but it kind of looks like Mars. So that's why they put it there.
And we also made an intentional stop at Hollow Rock, which is a convenience store that was built into a rock for those with claustrophobia. That isn't an ideal spot. The ceilings were really low. We checked it out. It was a little underwhelming, just kind of like a neat thing to see. We did get a bottle of water and the cashier was extremely friendly. So if nothing else, it was worth going just to have that interaction with a super nice person. Another park that we visited was Bryce Canyon National Park, which was a 4-hour drive from Cottonwood Heights, one way. So what we decided to do when we got there was we had looked at the map and noticed that all of the overlooks were on our left side while driving in. It's a 19-mile road, so we thought, let's just drive the straight 19 miles, look at everything, and then when we turn back, we'll take all of the stop-offs on our right so we wouldn't have to make turns. And that worked out really well.
So we just left, Rainbow Point? And now we're heading to Yovimpa Point, assuming I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's beautiful out here. It was a 27-mile hike, apparently.
It took us 2 hours from the time that we turned around, and we stopped at every viewpoint from that entire length of road. Also, if you're not aware and you are visiting national parks, every visitor center has a water filling station. You can bring your own water bottle in and fill it up. So we made sure to do that every time, especially since it was July and there were a lot of heat advisories. So our first overlook was Rainbow Point. That was beautiful.
It was gorgeous. The entire park was just beautiful. Bryce Canyon was for each of us. It was our favorite park in Utah, and honestly, one of my favorite national parks, period.
Yeah.
It's really
It's right up there with the Grand Canyon. It's awe-inspiring to see it.
It's really beautiful. They have these spire-shaped rock formations. They're crimson colored. They're called hoodoos. There's an area out there called the Bryce Amphitheater, and it's a hoodoo-filled depression that lies below the rim. You can see the hoodoos pretty much around the entire park. However, that area may have been the most impressive. They have a natural bridge there, which was a favorite of Felicia's for sure.
We went to Inspiration Point, which was another overlook, and then they had Upper Inspiration Point. Thought, oh yeah, we'll walk up there. We were all trekking up this dirt hill, and I made the really wise decision to wear Crocs that day. So hiking to this upper area in Crocs on dirt was not something I would have recommend. I'm not much of a hiker, if you couldn't tell by the fact that I wore Crocs to a national park. But we did it, and we got up there, and it was really high up, and the views were really impressive.
The entire park was just great, but they have other natural bridges. There's one called Thor's Hammer in the Grand Staircase, which is also really impressive. That's one of the more popular ones there.
That was a long day, though, because it ended up being a 12-hour driving day between the 8 hours driving round trip and then the hours inside the park plus eating. Definitely worth it, but a full day.
Third and final national park that we visited while we were there was Canyonlands. That was another pretty big driving day, as it was 3 to 4 hours one way from Cottonwood Heights, where we were staying. Canyonlands is divided into 4 separate districts. You have the Island in the Sky, the Needles, the Maze, and then you have the combined rivers, which are the Green and the Colorado rivers. Between the two, they carved out these large canyons in the Colorado Plateau. Made it to Canyonlands National Park and heading out to the Green River Overlook, which is the first one. We only visited the Island in the Sky while we were there, which is just huge flat top mesa with panoramic views and overlooks. Needles was 2 hours from Island in the Sky, so we already knew we were driving 6 to 8 hours round trip. So then to add another 4 hours to go to the Needles and then back, we didn't want to do that. And then the Maze is not quite as far away, but it's the least accessible area, and it's consistently rated as one of the top 10 most dangerous places to hike in the United States. So we decided to avoid that, as well.
An Island in the Sky, our first stop was the Green River Overlook. That was really nice. We spent a few minutes there. It's a pretty large overlook area for where all the people were, so you can really spread out and get good pictures from different angles. It smells like cat litter. Then we went to see the Upheaval Dome, which on the map was a half mile. We were like, oh, no problem, half mile. We hadn't looked or paid enough attention to the elevation climb, and it was intense, which made us pretty disappointed with the view when we got there.
Yeah. You good, my love?
Yep. Yeah.
Let's do it again.
Yep.
What was this? Well, it was a half a mile up and a half a mile back, so
A People don't. 2 thumbs down.
Yeah. Yeah, it really wasn't worth the rocky hike for what we got to see. It was good exercise though, but I mean, it would have been nice if the payoff at the end had been better.
That's assuming there's not going to be more extensive exercise. We just got here.
Yeah.
Shoe came untied.
Mesa.
This is the other one. First rule of hiking: double knot your laces.
Almost there, Tiana.
Hey, we can see the car.
And we made it back.
Juniper berries. Make some gin.
We are now walking to the Mesa Arch, which is, I think, 0.6 miles round trip, or at least that's what the thing says anyway. We'll see.
The Mesa Arch was another short hike with less elevation, and that was definitely worth the effort. Had the Mesa Arch been the reward for the half mile with steep elevation, I would have said that was cool. That was worth it. We got smarter and used the map to kind of look at that after we made the mistake on the first one, to make sure we knew what we were getting into.
Yeah. Don't remember how long we actually spent in Canyonlands. It may have been a couple of hours. Once we left Canyonlands, we had to go through Moab, which is where Arches is as well, but Moab is really close to Canyonlands. So we had lunch there at a place called the Sultan Mediterranean Grill. It was amazing. The food was so good. And so from there, we ended up going to a bookstore called Back of Beyond Books, which is a really cute bookstore. Right across the street from Back of Beyond was a place called Moab Coffee Roasters, and they had the best sorbet ever.
There's a lot of best ever.
Yes, I know. Their lemon sorbet had these chunks of lemon in it, which is not something I'd ever had before, but it was just so good.
It was a super hot day, over 100 degrees, so we didn't really want to spend a lot of time walking around outside. We ended up leaving around 3:30 in the afternoon from Moab to drive the 3 to 4 hours-ish back from Canyonlands. Like we said, we were really anxious to not be at our Airbnb too often. Kevin had done a lot of research, and we agreed that we would leave a day early to go to Kanab.
Yeah, Kanab was a place I'd learned about some years ago. Didn't know if we'd actually ever go, but it just seemed like it was a really cool and interesting place. So we ended up making that drive down there. In Kanab, they have a place called the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, and that was what I had actually learned about some years ago because we are big time animal lovers, and it seemed like such a cool place to go. They also have a place called the Best Friends Roadhouse in Mercantile, which is a gorgeous property. It's owned by the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. The Roadhouse in Mercantile was only a few miles from the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, so coming into town, we actually had to drive past the sanctuary to get where we were going to stay for the night. So we decided to stop into the animal sanctuary first, which is just an incredible place. The people there were lovely. The property is stunning. The views from there, the animals. Yeah, so we just loved everything about this place. In 2016, they developed a mission to ensure that every shelter in the United States was a no-kill shelter by 2025. We're at a point now where 52% of these shelters in the United States are no-kill. However, that's up from 24% when they developed this mission back in 2016. So unfortunately, it doesn't appear that they're going to hit their goal. However, the work that they're doing is obviously paying off because, again, just in 9 years at this point, they've more than doubled the amount of shelters that are no-kill. That's a feat. We want to see the entire nation as a no-kill, but I have no doubt they're going to keep working at it. Yeah, this place is absolutely massive. They have almost 37,000 acres of land. Some of that is leased from the government. That's actually larger than 10 or 12 of the national parks we have in this country. So they have, I think, over 1,600 animals, horses, pigs, dogs, cats, a whole bunch of animals. But we ended up, we weren't there very long long that first day because we knew we were going to come back the next day. So we kind of got a feel for the place. However, we did take the free 1-hour tour that they had.
The guide gave us a lot of information about the sanctuary. We went to see the pigs and we got to pet them. We went to see cats and we got to pet them. And she told us about the horses. And like if we had been there by ourselves, we wouldn't have been able to go into the pen with the pigs and sit with them. So just for that alone, it was worth taking their free tour. And they do take donations. And they have a little gift shop there.
Yeah, and between that day and the next day, we were actually able to interact with all of the animals with the exception of the horses. Yeah. So even the goats we were able to interact with. So yeah.
We could just stare at the horses from afar and send them our love. Yeah. So when we left the animal sanctuary, the first day went back to the roadhouse. We got our room and unpacked the car and everything. And the room was really great. Like, it was. The dog bed, and they had cat bed and litter box, and the entire room was designed around traveling with your pet. So yeah, if you're a pet owner and you want a place to stay, that's a great spot.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Everything caters to it.
Very nice property, clean. Everything inside was just nice and it felt new and modern. Yeah, highly recommend, without a doubt.
Yeah, and your stay includes a free vegan breakfast the next day, as well as a stay there gives you a voucher for vegan buffet at the sanctuary for lunch.
So the next day we checked out and we went back over to the sanctuary. We spent more time that day because we were on our own. And so we just drove around the property.
They had given us a map, so we knew the areas where we were allowed to go.
So we drove around, stopping at the different areas. We stopped and interacted with dogs, with the cats.
The one place with the cats, they separate the cats based on temperament and who can be socialized and who can't. So there was one house where all the cats had been socialized from an early age and they just had the run of the place. It was protected. There were gates everywhere so they couldn't get out, but they had fresh food, fresh water, toys, beds, cat trees, and you just walk in there and you can just love them as long as you want.
Pretty much.
Nobody's going to stop you. It's great.
Yeah, it was awesome. And it was really therapeutic because, obviously we just lost Moosh a few weeks prior. So enjoyed that time and took it all in. So
speaking of that, they have a very large pet cemetery there called Angel's Rest that was a site. Anyone can bury their animal there. You bring the cremated remains and they'll put a plaque or whatever you want. There were hundreds of wind chimes.
Hundreds.
It was a very peaceful area, quiet. You just hear the wind chimes going. And I mean, it was hard to be there, but I loved it for the whole, like Kevin mentioned, therapeutic aspect. And then from there, we drove up to where the vegan buffet was offered. That was really good. There were quite a few people there, but they took our vouchers. We went to the buffet, filled up our plates, and it was a hot day, but the views were so incredible that we decided to sit outside, and we were the only ones making that choice. But I didn't regret it. I thought it was great.
So the only other thing that was going on outside, other than the two of us sitting out there was a journalist doing a piece on the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary. So they did their interview. We sat and enjoyed the view.
Yeah, so after we ate, we just drove a little bit more to areas that we hadn't seen already. But then that was it, and we headed out.
Headed on out and went to our next stop, which we'll be discussing in our next video. So
we hope you'll join us.
See you next time. Thanks.